judge and jury. Do I get through to you? But every time I try to build up my case, you tear me down with your pretty face. You stand your ground and show the lightning in your eyes, and then I feel it. Cool magic wins me over. Oh, so silent, always strong. And I tell ya, cool magic wins me over. So I surrender to your charm. Okay, so the song you were just listening to, Cool Magic, was the second single on the Abracadabra album. I met Steve in 1981 when he was looking for material, and this was a song that I'd written for Utopia originally. I had gone out to New York to audition for the bass slot for the Utopia band with Todd Rundgren, and I'd written this in the hotel room there in Kingston before I went up to Bearsville, and I went up to Bearsville, auditioned, they liked me, and they wanted to know if I had any material. So we recorded the song with Utopia, but Todd didn't particularly care for a song for Utopia, that was a love song, because this was a love song I was writing for my then girlfriend Diane, who is now my wife, because she does have cool magic. And so this song I brought back from that New York thing. I recorded it in a couple days at the house when I came back, because apparently Kasim Sultan and Todd worked out their issues, so I never joined Utopia. They ended up having him come back. But that was just fine, because I took this song and put it in with the cluster of 8 songs that Steve Miller was looking for. And this was one of the songs that he picked that went on the Abracadabra album. So that being said, we're going to take this song apart tonight. It's an interesting song. It's kind of an 80s thing. It's got little cars in it, little police in it. It was actually inspired by My Maria. My friend Danny had written that song, the guy that wrote Shambhala. And so it's got that long hold note, like, Mama Maria, this is cool magic. It's just kind of a long note. When you write songs like this, you try to get a chorus that has like a very anthem-y kind of sing-along kind of thing. Back in the 80s, there was a lot of great material being written a long time ago, but there's nothing wrong with a good lyric and melody, right? So we're going to take the song. I'm going to kind of take it apart tonight and show you piece by piece how just the recording process works in general for any song. But we'll use this one as a template because I wanted to record it anyway. I always wanted to sing it. Now, the record is in E, and if you go on YouTube, you can listen to the master. I won't be playing the master on this video. We've been having a lot of trouble with YouTube because they don't understand when you're illustrating just a small piece of music. Even if it's played for a couple seconds, they have a problem with licensing, which I understand because I'm a writer, and I would like to be protected too. But this is a free video that I'm offering up just to try to get subscribers to start coming onto my YouTube channel. But I can't play that master from the Steve Miller album, the Abracadabra album, even though I wrote the song, because it's from a Steve Miller album, not from one of my albums. Anyway, and then I co-wrote it with Gary Mallaber. So I would have to get permissions and all that stuff. So for me to re-record a new master, I don't have to do that. So that's what we're doing tonight. I wanted to do it, but I'm doing it a whole step down from the original key, which was an E. The guitars are going to be detuned, but when you watch me doing them, if you're playing on an E guitar, you can learn all these parts with the positions that I'm doing because I'm detuned. And then that way, if you wanted to play along with the record on YouTube, you could do that. Either that or just enjoy watching the process of recording this. Anyway, you always have to start out with a good drum beat or some kind of a rhythmic pattern that you can lay a track down with. And so this is what I did, and I'll show you here on the screen. Okay, so what we have here is a Pro Tools screen. This is an old version, but most MIDI tracks in just about any audio software product or software you might be using would probably look very similar to this. You have your keyboard over here showing the different notes in the keyboard. I selected a drum kit from a patch on my Motif ES8 Yamaha product. But again, these are not real drums. They're samples of real drum, but they're not a real drummer playing them. So you want to make sure that you make a track, if you don't have the money or the resources to hire a guy, to come up with a track that sounds pretty good, and you don't want it to be totally quantized, because if you quantize everything, it just sounds like a robot. So as you can see, some of these notes are not quite in the pocket. Like, see, this one here is a little early, and then down here, like this one is a little late. And I did this on purpose. But here's the sounds of the drums. This was a kick I picked. It was way up at the high end of the keyboard. That's why I had to do a total large screen on this, which is the jumbo setting. But this was the kick drum. Just a nice pointed kick drum that's got a little, little balls to it. And then I picked the snare. Kind of a nice, bright, snappy snare. I will show you later in a masterclass how I've made these sound better, by adding ambient room reverb and also EQ. But for now, I've got a lot to do tonight, so I just wanted to kind of show you the basics. There's a crash coming in on the downbeat. Here's my hi-hat pattern. So this is the beat right here. Sounds like this. Nice little drum sound. Nothing too exciting. But like I say, you can add ambience to that and add EQ to that and make it really snappy. You start out with a click track to get your time going here, which I had here. You undo that and it sounds like this. So there's the click track. Get a click track, you match the tempo. This is 123 beats per minute, as you can see right here. And so I matched this to the record of Cool Magic from the Abracadabra album. This is what you do. You come up with something where you have just a nice beat. What you could do is later on add some fills and stuff, but you don't necessarily have to have it to write the song and to get it going. But this is, the intro that Mallaber kind of played. Okay, sounds pretty good. And then I'm going to add those things that I talked about. I'm going to put some room ambience on here, put a little EQ on the snare to make it a little snappier. It sounds like this now. See, it's got a little more air to it, a little more room ambience. Once you get that going, then you have a work track. Okay, and you can leave that in MIDI. And what I'm doing is I'm monitoring right now the actual chip inside the keyboard right here by going input on this drum. I've already recorded this drum track in an audio waveform, but right now we're just listening to the MIDI triggering the keyboard coming through the input on this channel. Once you get that in place, then we're going to go to putting down a guide track to drive the arrangement. And that looks like this. Okay, so now that we got the drum track down, which I just played by hand, by the way, on the keyboard, I just found the samples, just listened to the click track, played where it needed to go, and then I went in and I sort of corrected some of the notes so it would sound in the pocket, but also didn't correct all of them. I didn't quantize the whole thing. It was all played by hand. Also the hi-hat. I didn't quantize anything on this whole drum track because I wanted it to sound like a person, because it's a lot more fun to play with. Once you get the drums down, you want to do a guide track. And a guide track will just be something that kind of shows you the flow of the arrangement. I usually use an acoustic guitar because it doesn't get in the way too much. Short notes, doesn't ring a lot, but it's percussive and it will also be harmonically, in tune, so you could start putting other instruments with the track. This track is, like I said, it was kind of like a Cars thing. It starts out with an F sharp dominant 7 chord, which is just a 1, 3, 7 major third in the second position here. And so basically, this song was written around this riff. It's just kind of an oddball 80s kind of, think Devo meets the Cars or something. But this is what we were doing in the 80s. It wasn't like your typical blues-orientated rock. It was different. And then this next riff that you hear on the master is in C sharp, and it's kind of cool because it takes advantage of an open E. That's kind of cool. So that's a C sharp 7 with a B open. So it's just doubling that which you've already got on the 4th fret there with your ring finger. But this E note, that's the sharp 9. That's the major third. That's the minor third on top, which makes it a sharp 9. So you take advantage of it by going. And then I take the the 7 up to the octave here with my little finger, then back down to the 7, back to the sharp 9, and so the whole riff goes. And that was kind of like a cool little, guitar riff. So that are the two parts that are in the verse. And then it goes to a B section, same chord as this F sharp thing. It does the same thing at D. You could either play it up here. It was the same position as here, but rather than do that, just move from here to here. So that's just a D7 chord on the 5th fret, and just hammering on your little finger onto this F sharp on the B string, and then off. And then the G is the next section for the B section. Same position as we were doing in F sharp, but now in G major. And then up a whole step to A. And that's pretty much the verse and the B section. And then there's a little riff that comes in with a bass line, which goes like that. So it's open A. And then you go to the first inversion with your ring finger on the 4th fret, playing the C sharp. And then raise that up a whole step to B over D sharp. And then that goes to E. So like that. And that kicks into the chorus. And this is where the Police thing starts. There's a chorus pedal on the high notes here, and I'll switch over to electric now, and I'll show you that part. But I did the whole guide track with this acoustic guitar, just doing all those. The chorus is this. So it's like a 1 chord in E, and then what I do is I play like a sort of a G sharp minor. So it's a minor 7, G sharp minor 7, with just these 3, but I'm suspending the B and the E. And we keep that B and E note suspending through all these chords. Next one is A. Same notes again with the B suspending. And then going up to a B chord. Those notes are already up on top, and because that E's on there, it's a sus4 to the B, so it sounds like this. So that's also very 80s. It's just a real cool thing, using a lot of sus2s and sus4s. That was big in the 80s. So I did that track with just this guitar all the way through the song, just to guide it, and then I started layering it. So after you get your guide track with your acoustic guitar of whatever your song is, next would be bass. And that looks like this. Okay, so here's what it sounds like. This is the guitar track right here. We were just talking about doing a guide. This is what it sounds like at the beginning with the click. And when the drums come in, I'll just take out that click. Now we're just on drums. See, that's really nice to cut to. It sounds like a real band. Okay, so that's the guide track. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the bass. Okay, so this is the bass that I used on this track that you're listening to. It's very similar to the one I used on the record. The one on the record was a 64 real P bass that I ended up selling. But this is one that I got through the Fender Custom Shop, through some friends of mine, and they were very kind enough to get me the 63 spec Vintage Shop reissue, which is just wonderful. And in those days, I was playing a lot with a pick, and I was using these giant flat wound 1954 Labella strings, and they sound like this. It's very guitar sounding. But when you mix it into the track, especially if you mute the strings a little bit, you can get some really great punchy bass tracks. In fact, most of the disco stuff you hear from the old disco era, most of that stuff was done on basses with pick. And of course, all the pop songs from the 60s and 70s with Carol Kay and Joe Osborne and Max Bennett, all those people, They were using Fender P basses with these giant labello flat wound strings with a pick. It just cut through the track really well. You could hear the definition of the bass, and it cut really well on small speakers in cars in those days. A lot of those radios still had tubes in them. So that was a really long time ago. But that sound is really a great sound. So this song, I decided to use this because it's a very rock kind of a song. I play exclusively with my fingertips nowadays with round wound strings, with Miller Band for other reasons, just for filling up big sound stages and stadiums and sheds and stuff. But in the studio, I still like to go sometimes with a rock tune with flat wounds and a pick. That being said, this starts out with like a little... It's got that sort of like real rock and roll pointed edge, and it ended up sounding like this. Okay, so here's the bass track right here, and it ended up sounding like this with this Fender bass. Very 80s, but it points really nice with the kick drum. So now you see this song starting to come together. That's the way we start building a track. We got a guide track. Now I'm putting the bass down. Now I've got some power and I got some punch. Next thing we do is we go to the electric guitar that has all that cool chorus on it. And that looks like this. Okay, in 1981, when I did the guitar overdubs on this song in Gary Mallaber's studio, I at that time owned a 1959 ES345 that looked a little like this one, but it was a little more beat up. But it was a great guitar. I didn't want to use a Fender so much on this song, on these parts, because I wanted to bite and have a little hair on it, because that was kind of the sound of that day. I used both pickups, equal volume. I think I might have come off the front pickup a hair, and it ended up sounding like this. So when you listen to the album, it'll be an E. When you listen to the recording on YouTube of the Steve Miller Abracadabra, that's the key that we originally did it in. But I'm teaching you today in D, if you want to play along with this, but it looks like it's in, because I detuned the guitars, it looks like F sharp, and that would be proper if you want to play along with the record on YouTube. Using a small little amp, I think I used a Princeton in those days. Right now I'm using my little Tweed Pro Junior, just got it up to about 3 or something. It's got a little hair, but it's still pretty clean. And these tubes are really old, so it's kind of nice little sound. And then, of course, this part sounds really nice on this guitar. Because we already have a guide track playing these parts, this guitar now will chorus with that other guitar, because I'm just going to double the acoustic guitar now with the electric guitar, which makes a really nice texture sometimes. So you don't necessarily have to double, the acoustic twice and the electric twice. Just do one track of acoustic, throw it over to one side, and then put the electric on the other side, soft panning left, right, and then you get a really nice stereo image, which I'll show you in a minute. But so what we did is the verses had no chorus on it, which I mean by chorus is a chorus pedal, which is a Doppler effect, which kind of makes it sound kind of like, Police. We left that off on the verses. All those parts I showed you earlier. And then the chorus, we add this chorus onto the chorus, and now it sounds like this. You can hear that nice effect on there. And that's what we added onto the chorus of the song after doubling the guide tracks. I'll show you what that sounds like now on Pro Tools. Okay, so here's the guitar part right up here that we just added with that 335 through that Pro Junior. I got it soloed, and it ended up sounding like this. Pretty nice, clean sound, nothing too crazy. Okay, and then so when you add all the others in, it sounds like this. Sort of in stereo. You see the guide track on the left and the electric on the right. Bass comes in, drums, and there you go. Sounds pretty good. So you see how those two guitars kind of work. You had your acoustic guide track over on one side and the electric over on the right side, and made a nice stereo image. And then when they played that riff, it made sort of a chorusy sound like that without having to have that pedal on. It just did it naturally between the two guitars. So that's something that's kind of cool about using two guitars playing in sync in stereo. The chorus, of course, which is this thing with the chorus on, that's that policey kind of part. Now we'll show you what that sounds like on Pro Tools. Okay, so here's the guitar part coming into the chorus. It sounds like this. And so forth. So now you see we get these two guitars in stereo, left and right, and we've got a chorus now on the electric, which makes it even more washy, like it's underwater. So now we've got one more guitar part to put on in stereo just to kind of beef up the chorus. That'll look like this. Okay, so the next part we're going to put on is just doubling the bass on the chorus. It just adds this big giant rock drive with the bass line. It sounds like this. Like that. And the way I get this sound is I went to the rear pickup, humbucking on this guitar. I added a tube screamer with the knobs set at just about at 2 on the distortion. The tone is flat, straight up. And then the levels, like about, 2.5, 3 o'clock. So basically it's not a lot of distortion, just enough hair. Here's the difference with it off. That's just straight through the amp. Here it is with the tube screamer. So it just adds a little more hair, that's all. Another gain stage. The way that it sounds when it comes into the chorus now, doubled left and right, this part sounds like this. Okay, so here's these two guitar parts that we just put on. By the way, those notes are G sharp, A, C sharp, D sharp, E. That is the bass line and the guitar line on the chorus. And it just sounds like this. Really nice and fat. Little slide there. This is just like, typical 80s kind of big rock chorus song. And that goes into the second verse. So there you go. Now you've got two guitars playing the same part throughout the song in stereo. You got two guitar parts left and right doing crunch lines with the bass in stereo. And you're like really making this thing sound pretty nice now. At this point, I decided to just go ahead and put a vocal on. So now we're going to switch completely and get off the guitar and bass, and we'll show you how singing goes when you start doing these songs. Alrighty. And it looks like this. Okay, so this is when it really gets interesting. Instead of it just being a guitar and a bass masterclass, we're also going to get into the songwriting process and also the way we cut lead vocals on these things. Most of you have small studios out there. If you're interested in watching this, you probably record and write yourself. I found a really nice tube mic. It's called an MXL Revelation. It was a very cheap tube mic that I was able to get. I looked at reports on Mix Magazine, and it was compared to like a Telefunken 47. They showed the curves and everything. Went, okay. And they were having a sale on them at NAMM a couple years back. I bought 3 of them, and I got to tell you, I'm very, very impressed. So you want to get a large diaphragm, good microphone for doing vocals. You want to get a pop filter like this in the front, which is kind of like a nylon stocking, to keep you from keeps you from popping the P's. It slows down the air, as you can see. So you want to use something like this so you're not popping P's when recording. This is this track here. I'm just going to play it and sing along with it. So here's the track with me doing a scratch vocal live right now. I'm probably not going to be very in tune, but we'll try. Can't imagine how to tell my story and not fuss or fight, but I really want to talk to you. You see, I'm not in agreement with the law this morning, so don't be my judge and jury. Do I get through to you on YouTube? So anyway, that's just me singing live, out of tune, of course. The other night I got some coffee and I got really into it, and I did this vocal, which sounds like this, which is when you heard earlier tonight when I played the piece. That sounds like this. I can't imagine how to tell the story and not fuss or fight, but I really want to talk to you. You see, I'm not in agreement with the law this morning, so don't be my judge and jury. Do I get through to you? The lyrics in this song are very unusual, as you can see. And when Gary and I and John Massaro, actually it was just Gary and I worked on this. I had written most of this stuff, like I said, for the Todd Rundgren Utopia band. Gary's really good at some poignant lyrics, and he helped me with a couple of the lines. And we decided to make this song edgy. It's a love song, but it's about the dynamics that people go through in a relationship where you are feeling a little insecure, you're feeling a little on trial sometimes, you're feeling like you're out of control, but then at the same time, everything else about the relationship is great. And there's this really romantic submission that you give into. And in this case, it was a magical submission of magic that happens, of course, in relationships. That was going on in my relationship at the time. I really felt that the cool magic was enough to forgive all the other things that you go through in a relationship. So, that being said, you want to get an attitude when you're singing this where you're kind of in a character. And the other night when I sang this, I've never sang this before. John Massaro, our songwriting partner, was nice enough to do the demo on this that we gave to Steve. And Steve ended up singing it for the record. I've never done this song, so that's why I wanted to do this. And I'm now jumping into the character that I created through the script with my own personality and my own voice. And it's very, very challenging because I got to find that spot. And I'm still working on it, but I think you're getting the idea that I got a little bit of a sarcastic sneer a little bit while I'm singing it. I'm kind of smiling a little bit. You know, I can't imagine how to tell my story and not fuss or fight, but I really want to talk to you. So, you know, people, when they're having a young relationship, they have their spats, and you want to be able to communicate, but you can't get through. You see, I'm not in agreement with the law this morning, so don't be my judge and jury. Do I get through to you? You're kind of pointing your finger, and you're kind of like getting angry without getting violent. You're just drawing the line and saying, you're putting your foot down. And we do that in relationships. But every time I try to build up my case, you tear it down with your pretty face. Well, that kind of throws everything out the window for a minute because she's beautiful. And in the case of a woman singing the song, he'd be beautiful. He'd be handsome. But then you show the strength, in this case, the woman. You stand your ground and show the lightning in your eyes. That's when you know you really can't go any farther. She's not going to change with whatever it is that you're having the spat about. And so you just kind of give it up. And you say, and then I feel it. Cool magic wins me over. Oh, so silent, always strong. So in other words, the magic, it doesn't have to be spoken. It's just a feeling you have. It could be visual, it could be sensual, it could be physical, who knows? But whatever it is, it's silent. There's no words now. You just feel it. Cool magic wins me over, so I surrender to your charm. There you go. That's the way most relationships end up working their way out. So I just wanted to kind of go over that a little bit to kind of show you the character that I had to get into to start singing this. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to double it. And when you double it, it sounds like this. Okay, so here's the lead vocal on this gold, and then I'm going to show you what the double does with the purple here in a minute. But for now, let's just listen to this soloed. Here's my track the way I recorded it, just raw with a little reverb. But every time I try to build up my case, you tear me down with your pretty face. Okay, that sounds pretty good. It's, you know, your typical dry sound sort of in the center. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this short delay in stereo. I'm just putting up like 23 milliseconds, 24 milliseconds, splitting them left and right a little bit. I'm going to put that on, and now it sounds like this.
But every time I try to build up my case, you tear me down with your pity.
You can hear what it does. It's kind of putting it into a stereo image and makes it a little more, sits in the track a little nicer. But you notice it kind of loses a little of the low end. So to compensate for that, I go over here and I go to an EQ that I had set up with a little bump here at about, let's see, looks like it's 193 hertz and it's 7.5 decibels right here. And when I add that,
but every time I try to build up my case,
hear the difference?
You tear me down with your pretty face.
Add some of that low end that I lose when I split it in stereo, because it kind of goes out of phase a little bit, but it sounds cool in the track. So in the track now, it sounds like this.
But every time I try to build up my case, you tear me down with your pretty face.
So that sounds really cool. So what you do is now you double the lead vocal on a different track, which is this purple track here. Same thing, but just a different track. And it's an old trick left over from the 60s and 70s to double and even triple your lead vocals sometimes to just give it a real fat sound. Now, they have electronic devices that'll make it sound like a doubler, kind of like what I did with that delay. That just kind of spread it out a little bit. But when you double it and you bring the volume down a little bit, you don't want to have an equal volume. If you notice here, I've got this down about 4 or 5 dB on this track over here. So when you listen to it now, with the double, it sounds like this.
But every time I try to build up my case, you tear me down with your pretty face.
Just sounds more powerful when it has that double in there. So now I'm going to show you what it sounds like doubled all the way out to the end through the chorus here.
But every time I try to build up my case, you tear me down with your pretty face. You stand your ground and show the lightning in your eyes. And then I feel it, cool magic wins me over.
So there you go. So now we have it doubled all the way through the B section and then all the way through the chorus. So now we got a really strong lead vocal that's doubled. So now what we want to do is we want to put in some background parts. They look like this. Okay, so here's the background parts that I put on. I just did a minor third above the melody there. But every time I try to build on my case, I just put a third above that, doubled it, put it in stereo, kept the double in the middle, and now it sounds like this.
But every time I try to build up my case.
See what I'm saying? So now we got a nice beefy thing going on there. And then when we go to the chorus with the harmony, it sounds like this.
You stand your ground and show the lightning in your eyes. And then I feel it, cool magic wins me over.
Now let me show you what those backgrounds sound like without the lead vocal. They're interesting because they don't move with the lead vocal. You don't want all the parts always paralleling. Sometimes you want to sustain a note. And this is what we did.
Cool magic wins me over.
See how that works? And so what you do is you sustain that note, and then the melody goes over the top of that, and it sounds like this.
Cool magic wins me over.
See how that moves over the top? So it's kind of like country music. You hear a lot of that, where the vocals sustain the note and then the other part moves. And it's, it's classic music. It's what Bach did on 4-part organ inventions for church and stuff. That's what happens when you start layering background vocals. So now we're going to move to one more part, which will be at the very, very end. We add a third part. I'll show you what that sounds like. Okay, so at the very end, we added these two high parts above the stack on this Cool Magic ending. This is a little different than the chorus. This is just a ride out, but it's a really big fat chorus sound. This is something I think Steve came up with. because I don't remember having this on my original recording. So it's very cool. I just kept repeating the same chorus over and again. But check this out. With the three parts now, it sounds like this.
Cool magic.
Pretty cool, huh?
Cool magic.
So what we're doing is we're just adding these. I'll just solo these so you can hear what they sound like.
Cool magic.
And as you can see, I haven't been singing a lot lately because we've been COVID lockdown. So, my vocals are a little challenged. Here's the harmonies.
Cool magic.
That's the lower part. And then, of course, the top part.
Cool magic.
When you add them all up, they sound like this.
Cool magic.
Okay, so there you go. That's the way we do lead vocals on a hit record. Now we're going to put on the sweetening, as we call it. There's some lead guitars that have to go in here, one of which is going to be a reverse guitar. And that looks like this. Okay, so back in '81, I was experimenting with doing lead guitars by flipping a tape over. And in fact, the 8-track that's sitting right over there that was in that other shot, if you can go back and look at it when I was doing the vocals, was the machine that I actually recorded this song on that ended up getting transferred to 24-track that Steve put on the Abracadabra album. But what I would do is I would take the tape and flip it over. This was an old technique, probably the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper, or who knows when all this started, but Hendrix used to do it a lot. Eddie Kramer was big on this with him on the first couple records. In this case, with Pro Tools, we don't have to do that. We can just push a button, which is really nice. But you still have to do the same technique. Now, we're going from the G, if you will, if you're playing in the key of E. In this case, it'd be the key of F to G. But it looks like I'm playing G to A. That's because I'm down a step, remember? What you got to do when you do reverse leads is that you want to start with where you're going to end. So I wanted to end on my, basically what would look like my A and the key on the record that you'll hear on YouTube. So I want to start with a note that's an A. So I'm just bending up, my 7th fret on my G string from a D up to an E, which is the 5th of A. So I start with that, already bent. So I'm doing the reverse. And then I'm going to play a riff in the key of G coming after that, because that's where I'm going to start with the reverse. So it's going to sound, I'm playing a riff like this. So I'm just starting in the key that I'm going to end in A, on the 5th, which is an E, and then I'm going to play a blues riff in G, coming down. I want to hold that low note for a while with some vibrato, because I want it to come in, sneaking in with some vibrato, so it sounds kind of Indian or something like that. And we'll show you how that works in Pro Tools right now. It's pretty cool. Okay, so here's my reverse guitar lead that I did, that I just played you a second ago on the guitar. It sounds like this when you listen to it forward. So again, that was like my riff starting in a higher note of E on the A chord and then coming down to G on the reverse. So now I go up here to my pull down menu in Audio Suite and I go to Other and I go to Reverse. And this is my tool here, and I'm going to process it because I've already got it highlighted. Process. So there you go. It sounds kind of Indian, kind of weird. Starts out low. That's the note that I ended on, which was the G note. So that matches this chord. And then it goes up to A. And it ends on that E, which is in the key of A. So there you go. Kind of a weird thing. And the reason why we did it is because, in the 80s, things were kind of strange. They were doing all kinds of weird stuff in audio. And there's another riff that I did in the second verse. And I'll just roll to that real quick. I'll show you what that sounds like forward and backwards. Okay, so here it is here. I'll just sample that. I'm going to reverse it back. I want you to hear it the way it originally was. So I'm going to process it back. And then this is the way I originally recorded it. It sounded like this. So now it sounds like this. That's that riff forward and backwards, and that fits in between the second verse. So it's so fun to do this because all you got to do is just pull down a pull down, man. You push the button, it does all that work that we used to have to do when we'd flip over a tape, and have to go to the opposite track and do the math to find out what track was on the opposite side of the tape from the center. Of course, synthesizers were very popular in the 1980s. Gary had a Super Jupiter Roland product that was really cool. I can't remember what patch he used on this. I just found something that was just kind of interesting, had a little arpeggiation in it. This is the bridge to the song. The bridge kind of goes into sort of like an ELO Beatley thing, and we just threw that in just to have another little dimension to the song. Even though it's a 3.5-minute song, we're trying to jam pack as much stuff as we can, and that's when you're making hits, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get a lot of different hooks, so the listener's never bored. So this was the synthesizer we added on this bridge part, but this is the part that I just picked the other night, and it works pretty good. It sounds like this. Okay, and so those are the chords that I'll show you in a minute on guitar that we put in the song, but I just wanted to show you the sweetening part before I got back into teaching guitar chords and stuff. So that's a synth that kind of worked. And so we're going to bring that back in the mix a little now. Come over here to the mixer. Go over here to this thing called synth. I'm going to bring that down. And then I added another thing because I wanted to have kind of a 10cc kind of sound. So I added some ahs, like a choir. So now it sounds like I'm Not in Love, by 10cc. Sounds like this. And so there you go. Now you got like this really cool sounding bridge part. Now there's a guitar solo that goes on here, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. I'm actually going to record it live for this episode. So you guys are going to actually see me record something in real time that I'm going to keep. So anyway, let me get back to guitar, and I'll show you what's going on with some of those parts. Okay, so back to the 335 here. So this is the bridge to the song. We've done this whole chorus in E on the record with Steve, and then with the one we're doing tonight, it's in D. That's the chorus. So we've already got the verses, the chorus. Now we go to this bridge. So the bridge goes and does kind of a key change a little bit. It goes to G. So G, and then it goes to a G minor 7 flat 5, or you can just call it a G diminished. It's got a flat third and a flat 5. Okay? And then it's going to go to a F sharp minor, which you can even add like a minor 9 if you want, which is kind of nice. So one more time. In this key that we're in would be F, and then an F minor 7, flat 5. And then to a E minor, and then just kind of the rock thing in F sharp. That riff is like this. I did that on a telly. That's why this sounds funny. I stayed in regular tuning so I could play it E minor. I did that on a telly. It's just, So that's the only other parts to the song other than the solo. Now the solo I'm going to do looks like this. It's going to be G triads, a 1 and a 3, upscale wise in the key of G or the key of F for this record. Just thirds. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3. And then I'm going to slide that down because it goes to G minor, flat 5, but I'm not playing a fifth in this, so I can just go to a minor. like that. And then we'll play a diminished line, starting from the G on the top, going down diminished every step and a half. So that's where the classical music part comes in. So diminished line, down to F sharp minor, and that's where it resolves. And then I just play this little, kind of a weird little, I think they're fourths. Or they're fifths, actually. Actually, that's a third, 1-3, and then 1-3, and then 1-4, and then these are fifths. So it's kind of a combination of intervals of thirds, fourths, and fifths. And that would be in the key of E minor on this thing, and then F sharp minor on the record. Okay, so I'm going to play that solo. I'm going to do it live, and I'm going to show you what it's like to actually do that in real time, and I'll put a camera on me. Okay? Okay, so here we are with the close-up of the neck. Once again, that solo looks like this. That's the solo that I did on the record. So now I'm going to take the microphone off the room here because I want to hear this without that room bleed while I'm doing it. Okay? And it'll look like this. Okay, so I sort of cheated a little bit there. I changed my solo because I realized that on the bridge chords, I was playing that G to a G major 7. And so what I did is I changed the melody on the solo to, I went up there to it's a D chord against a G, which makes a major 9, as you all know. Play a D over G, it makes a major 9. So that's what I did. I went up to the D triad for the top of that. And then I just came down from there. So that's C, B minor, C, and then sliding down to G minor. So that worked a little better for me. And then the diminished run. And then you have to slide up a minor third. So that was it. You guys got to see a solo in real time. I played it in one take. I did some ahs, some beatly ahs on the bridge. I'll show you how that works. Okay, so here are some background vocals that I put on when I heard those synthesizer ahs. They sounded okay, like 10cc, but it sounded kind of phony, like a sample. So I went ahead and did some vocals, and they are solo. They sound like this. To the minor, to the lower minor. And now, with everything in, it sounds like this. Okay, so that's the bridge. All right, so this is Cool Magic. This is all the different layerings that I did the other night just to kind of see if I could do it. I was able to do it. I'm out of shape. I haven't been singing and performing lately, but I worked with my vocals and I managed to squeak out the parts. They're not perfectly in tune, but when you double them and you spread them out, you do what I'm doing with little reverb and stuff, it works pretty good. It sounds as good as a lot of records from that era. I hope you enjoyed this. Cool Magic was the second single. It didn't get a big push. It was kind of an interesting time. It was payola was going on in those days. The reason why Abracadabra was a hit is because they made it a hit in Amsterdam through Polygram Mercury, not Capitol. So that's why Abracadabra took off. And then, of course, they had to follow it up over here. But when Cool Magic was released, for whatever reason, didn't get degrees, and it went up to about 47 on the charts or something like that. So that's about as close as I got to getting in the top 10. So, otherwise I'd have a much bigger house. No, I'm just kidding. I'm very happy. Wouldn't change anything that's happened in my career. This was a great experience, and I hope you enjoyed sharing it with me. It was a long time ago. It's like 38 years ago, but it was a really cool time in history in American music. So anyway, Fret Friends, this was episode 3, dissecting cool magic. I don't know what the next one will be. This was done on my old system. The reason why it took forever for me to get this done was because I bought a new computer, which you might have seen the screen earlier, but it wouldn't see the audio on OBS, and I have a tech coming on Monday to look over that. So this was my old system. Hopefully I'll be able to edit it in the new system, because that's what the problem is the editing. But I'll put all this together. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a friend of the Fret. Make sure that you like this video and that you subscribe to it if it's your first time. And again, if you want to take private lessons, you can just go to kennyleelewis.com, my website. Send me an email there on the info contact. We can do a Zoom FaceTime lesson if you want, or Skype. I'll be glad to show you how some of this stuff is done. Again, like with the drum tracks and the bass tracks and some of the things earlier tonight, I'm going to be getting more into that, more in depth in some master classes on how to, use Pro Tools or any kind of audio software to make records. So that'll be a master class. That's coming. Okay? So thanks a lot, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.